I thought you were the guy to talk to because this new proposal by the European Union called Article 13, there may be some noble public policy goal underneath it to reward content creators with the fruits of their labor. I get that as a content creator. I bet you do too. But it sounds like it could be abused to go after anyone who posts a funny image. It could be writ large the same malicious prosecution you underwent for your YouTube video. That could theoretically happen to anyone who shares something on Facebook or Twitter. Am I overstating things?
Well, at the moment, they're saying that it's going to be used for copyright, but I guarantee you in the future it's going to be used for things like speech. That is, if something is offensive, or, even if it's just a joke that's a little bit too edgy, then things like that, they're going to be subject to these exact same restrictions. Right now, it's starting with copyright, but I promise you in the next few years, it's just going to be used for all kinds of speech that they don't approve of.
One way of looking at it is that anyone on the internet, almost no matter what you say or do, would break this rule. So we're all guilty under this rule, and then it just comes down to who do they choose to charge, because every one of us retweets or shares something on Facebook. So as you say, who they go after, eventually, of course it will be a political tool. Of course it will be a censorship tool, even if it doesn't start off that way, because that's a way to get anyone, isn't it?
Well, the way that they're doing it as well is it's not going to be the end user like me. It's not going to be the user. It's going to be the platforms that get punished. So basically, even if we get angry about our content being removed, we're going to be screaming and screeching at the platforms when it's not actually their fault. They just have to comply with this legislation. So basically, it's the EU that have done it, but it's the platforms themselves that are going to get the brunt of the blame.
When you say the platforms, you're referring to YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, the places, these electronic digital town squares, as I've heard others refer to them. That's a phrase that Jack Dorsey of Twitter uses. I think, though, you're right, it's the government behind it, but I think that the companies are only too happy to do the bidding of governments. I think there's a lot of log rolling, a lot of favors exchanged. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter do a favor for the government, and in return the government maybe goes easy on them for their tax structures, for other things. I mean, I sense that while these companies claim to be independent, they actually love doing business with governments, especially authoritarian governments.
Oh, it's absolutely. See the EU itself. The legislation that gets proposed to the EU comes from big tech, big corporations, and lobbying groups that are sponsored by them. Basically, if any of these big corporations want legislation to get put through, then they can go forward and propose it, and it will get put through. And I think that big tech obviously might end up needing to pay fines. They're going to need to adopt algorithms and spend some money to police the platforms better. But in the long term, that they win, because small companies aren't subject to the legislation, but when they reach a certain size, then they are subject to the legislation, which means that they'll either, they need to adopt algorithms. There literally is no way to hire enough staff to monitor the sheer amount of content that gets posted online. So all that happens is small companies need to stay small, so they're not subject to the regulations because they simply can't afford to abide by them, or they try and end up just getting completely buried financially, which means that the big tech that are at the top, their place is now secure. They'll take a little bit of a hit monetarily, but in the long run they benefit because no one's going to be able to compete with them now.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.